You personally, how would you decide?
Hey everybody, welcome to Kent with Bent number 139. This is Amok Kent. How is everybody? How are you, Bent?
Oh, I'm doing fine. How are you?
I am... That's a great question. You know, I've got some grievances, and I know that it's not Festivus,
Yeah.
but I feel like I should air my grievances anyway. First of all, my first grievance is with ornithologists, just broadly. Okay? I'm getting a little feedback now. I don't know why I wasn't before, and I am now, but eh. Okay, so as people know, I live in Arizona, and I see a lot of great-tailed grackles, like a lot. They're all over the place. In case you don't know what a great-tailed grackle is, grackles are birds in family like Icteridae, I believe. They're largish for passerine birds, but they're large passerine birds, and they're very gregarious. And they also do this thing where they shed a lot of their feathers all at once. So every once in a while, like the entire population of grackles just looks like crap, and then their new feathers come in and they look great again. It's a weird thing they do. Anyway, I sometimes look at stuff like guides to local birds or other animals and whatnot, and never do they ever include grackles. So for a while, I was thinking, am I just crazy? Are there actually no grackles here, and I'm just not knowing what crows look like? Did I forget what crows look like, and that's actually what I'm seeing? Turns out, no. Apparently, all of ornithology just got together to try to gaslight me, because then I double-checked the great-tailed grackle range map on, I think it was like Wikipedia, and there it is. They're just here. Just no one ever bothers to talk about them, apparently. I'm apparently the only person on the internet, outside of that one Wikipedia page, who has bothered to even mention the existence of the great-tailed grackle. And I don't appreciate it, ornithologists. So if you know ornithologists out there, you let them know that I am angry at them. All of them, collectively. I'm not actually all that angry, but it is weird. Alright, the other thing I'm annoyed at, there was bad Power Rangers news. It turns out that one of the artists I follow, who has been doing amazing Power Rangers costume redesigns, was contracted to work on the show. The new show that is now basically just been canceled. So that's fun. Wait, what's the opposite of fun?
Boo.
It's boo. Alright. Let's see. So, but with that said, that is enough of me airing my grievances. Ben, do you have any non-Festivus grievances to air?
Yeah, my back hurts too much.
That is unfortunate.
Yeah.
Alright, but we are going to get into some membership chats and some super chats. So let's see, Diem, the Theorem wing, nice, is at the annual member and has been a member for 24 months, which is why they said
Nice.
Dapper 2-year get, followed by a Godzilla, a Mothra, and a King Ghidorah, and a bunch of turtles, and some drink emojis, so we will drink for that. Thank you very much.
Nice.
I am drinking some hard iced tea. It's pretty decent. It's I wanted something a little sweet and a little lighter than I normally get in this fit the build, and it's a little more astringent than I usually go for. But you know what? That's okay. It's black tea. It's astringent. That's just how it is. Also, Rail Gatubello for $2 says AIG are a bag of penises, but says it in Tamil, which is a language I don't know. So I had to check to see what language that was, because I don't recognize Tamil off the top of my head. So we'll take a drink for that. And no, I will not try to pronounce it in Tamil, because I don't know anything about the phonetics or phonology or phonotactics or anything like that about Tamil. I'm not even sure I know what language family it belongs to. I feel like it's Dravidian. Alright, guys on the internet, quick, find out if Tamil is Dravidian or Indo-European. I feel like it's Dravidian, but what do I know? Rosina Apophenia Sufferer Keller for $4.99 says, I have a container of hot sour cream on my nightstand. This is the test of typing a super chat on iOS 18. Okay, well, it seems to have worked. Alright, so we are not primarily here to complain about ornithologists or Hasbro, because of course Hasbro was in charge of all of this decision making. But anyway, we are here to talk about something even worse. Yes, worse than ornithologists. And that is Kent Hovind. The man who now has an even larger body count, because I do count that rattlesnake he murdered. That rattlesnake that was minding its own business, that Kent harassed. It is Dravidian, says Guptu3. Alright, that makes sense. It's not just Dravidian, it's the Dravidian language of India. I mean, I'm not even sure what that means. It's not the only Dravidian language out there. Like, isn't Telugu also Dravidian? I mean, it's Dravidian with heavy Indo-European borrowing, but like, it's still Dravidian. Look, I'm not an expert on like Indian subcontinent linguistics, guys. You gotta give me a break. At least I know that Dravidian languages exist, which is more than I can say for most people who aren't from India. Trailmix, who's been a member for 17 months, says, when will you like less than half of us half as well as we deserve with a Godzilla? That will depend on whether or not at least 50% of the people viewing have hit like, or well, if we have at least 50% as many likes as we do viewers by the half-hour mark, but I'll take a drink. And then Vagrant Vagabond of Variant Vistas, who's been a member for 12 months, is at the amniote level, says, AIG is a vicious vacuole of veiny, vicious, vivid vines. Yay for 1 year with a Dapper and a Godzilla, so we'll take a drink for that. So, for those of you who might be new, here on these Tuesday shows, we have a little bit of a drinking game. You can see we've already had 4 drinks triggered. So, the way this works is, first, we will take a drink anytime Kent Hovind says something that's so stupid we just kinda have to. Second, we will take a drink anytime Kent Hovind actually gets something right. Which, you know, not too frequent. We will also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind tells a story that didn't happen or tells a joke that doesn't land. So, for instance, if he tells a story about how he totally owned this one guy on an airplane who happened to be a Berkeley professor who didn't know anything about anything, yeah, we're going to take a drink for that, because I'm pretty sure that didn't happen. Also, if he just tells some lame dad joke that no one likes, we'll take a drink. Which, by the way, I like dad jokes. So, yeah, the fact that Kent frequently tells dad jokes that are so bad that I don't like them, that should tell you something. Rosina Apophenia Sufferer Keller for $4.99 says, did Kent have to present the snake to the hospital to get proper antivenom? So, that is probably why he killed it. But, in fact, that is not a real thing. Or at least it's not always a real thing. If you live in a place with a lot of venomous snakes that could have been the culprit, then yeah, it's probably important to have the snake handy. However, Kent was bit by a rattlesnake in Conoco County. There is one species of rattlesnake that lives in Conoco County. It is the timber rattlesnake, Crotalus horridus. That's it. And ultimately, like, even if you were a little bit farther south, where there's a little bit of the eastern diamondback rattlesnake, Crotalus, what is it? Amanuensis or something like that? I don't remember the specific designation for it, but even if it had been that, like, so you say it was a rattlesnake, there's only like 2 options. It'll be fine. It's not like you were bit by a black mamba or something. So yeah, yeah, he did not need to kill it to bring it to the hospital. Although I will say there have been hospitals who have said, please stop bringing us live snakes, because then we just have to call animal control and it makes everything more difficult. Please stop doing that. Because people have been show up to the hospital sometimes with a live rattlesnake in a bag. Like, this is the snake that bit me. It's like, okay, thanks. Could you get rid of it? No. Okay, animal control. So yeah, don't show up to the hospital with a live snake. They don't like that. Not medical advice. Okay, so let's see. We will also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind mentions that group of that political party from Germany back in the 1930s and 40s, right? There. He likes to bring them up. We'll take a drink for that. We will also take a drink anytime Kent Hovind takes specimen Lucy of Australopithecus afarensis and confuses what we can know on the basis of just that skeleton with what we know about any wider taxon to which she belongs, right? So if he says, well, we don't know what kind of feet Australopithecus had because Lucy wasn't found with feet, or even if he just says we don't know what kind of feet Lucy had because she wasn't found with feet, that's wrong, because we have other Australopithecus feet. And, I mean, yeah, we know what her feet look like. So, let's see. We will also take a drink if Kent cites a source, then we check the source, and rather than supporting his claim, it actively contradicts his claim. or sorry, rather than not support, because sources are always going to not support unless they're creationist sources. But if it actively contradicts, then yeah, we'll do that. Now, if Bent or I can predict what Kent is going to argue, we'll take a drink for a prediction as long as we're right. So we have to actually, get it right. We can't just make the prediction, because this isn't creationism, where all that matters apparently is that you make the prediction and then you just never bother to go and check. Rosina Ripsneck Keller.
Who would do that?
Right. Rosina Ripsneck Keller says, "Drink if Kent insults Chihuahua." I don't know. Maybe I'll see how I feel about it if that happens. Average 1080 radiometric pixels Cobra for $5 says, I don't know what song this is, but it says, I'm supposed to sing this apparently. It says, "Put that snake back where it came from, or so help me." And I don't know what that song is.
Put that snake back where it came from, or so help me. That's it. That's from Monsters, Inc.
Oh, okay. I've not seen that movie in such a long time, which is too bad. I like that movie. It is a good movie, and I just haven't seen it in a very long time. Maybe that should go on my watch list. Next time Vishanti's like, "Hey, you want to watch a horror movie?" I'm like, "Yeah, Monsters, Inc. All about horror, because I have to scare the children." And she will probably not agree to that. Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $5 says, "After your comment on grackles, I had to check. A few species are listed in both my Western and Eastern North American bird field guides." Good. I'm glad that that it's not actually the entirety of ornithology that is conspiring to hide the existence of the great-tailed grackle. Which has been super weird, guys. This has been a low-key obsession of mine, is to figure out why this isn't the case. Like, why can't I find grackles anywhere on lists of birds from around here? For like a year. I haven't talked about it, because it's been very low-key.
Hey.
But yeah, for like a year, I've been like, why are there no sources that talk about the grackles here? What is going on? And yeah, I'm enough of a dinosaur nerd that one of my low-key obsessions for a year has been secondary literature lack of coverage of one species of bird in North America. Both this is from Borg Emporia, who's been a member for 12 months and is at the amulet level. Both AIG and Kent make Packlets look smart. With a pelagic tunicate, gross, and a Godzilla dice, and a turtle. And a member for 1 year, yeah, nice. We'll take a drink for that Godzilla. Which, of course, brings me to the ways that you guys can get us a drink. One of which you've already seen a few times is if you make a super chat or a membership milestone chat that has any of the kaiju emojis. We have 3. We have Godzilla, Mothra, and King Ghidorah. We'll take a drink for that. You do have to be a member. That starts at $1.99 a month. There's a little join button right below this. We'll also take a drink anytime you say AIG is a bag of dicks in a super chat or a milestone chat. And also, if you gift memberships, we'll take a drink for each gifted membership. Although if the stack of memberships we have to drink for gets to like 30, I'm just going to finish this can of iced tea, grab another one, and add the number to the drink counter. Because, I don't want to sit here and count for the next, half hour. But I think that is basically it for drinking rules. Did I miss any, Bent? Oh, Dapper's a professional. If I screw up the production of this, we take a drink. So, for instance, if I forget to unmute Bent at some point, or if I don't know, switch to the wrong scene, or something like that, then Dapper's a professional. If, however, software crashes or the internet goes down or something like that, that is not Dapper's a professional, because I didn't make the mistake. Also, one last final note, I made a slight change to the math of how the little donation tracker works. You probably won't notice it, because it will be almost impossible to notice. But I changed the behavior to the percentage sign on the left, rounding to the nearest whole number percentage, to having a truncated whole number percentage. So if it's 99.9%, it's not going to say 100%. It's going to say 99%. A minor difference, but it basically means that I won't be lying to you accidentally. If we get really close to the 100% number, it will only hit 100% if we actually get to actual 100%. Because otherwise, it would be kind of sort of lying to you, where I'd be like, "Oh, it says 100%, but really, we're like $1 away." That sounds like lame, and I don't want to do that. Yeah. But anyway, I think we are ready for some Kent Hovind. Bent, are you going to be more ready in the next 30 seconds?
No, I'm ready now.
All right, here we go.
Down in South America, when they find the fossils,
he's talking about horses.
The 3-toed horses are on top. The 1-toed horses are on the bottom.
Okay, so this is something that I slightly screwed up last week, which is why we're going back just a little bit to talk about this claim. Because I had said that the animals he was talking about were notoungulates, and I couldn't remember the generic name. And I was wrong. They are not notoungulates, they are leptopterns. Now, leptopterns and notoungulata form a clade together of South American ungulates, and they are themselves more closely related to paracerdactyls than they are to artiodactyls. Paracerdactyls are the odd-toed ungulates, like rhinos, horses, and tapirs, and calicotheres, if you know what they are. Whereas the even-toed ungulates are things like deer, giraffe, pronghorns, cattle, sheep, goats, musk deer, mouse deer, chevretains. I realize probably some of those you haven't heard of, but it's okay. Go look up chevretains. They're adorable. So Leptopterns are a much more gracile group of animals than the much larger and heavier, more rhino-like nodoungulata, or nodoungulates. And they have one single-hoofed genus called Thoatherium. Thoatherium is absolutely not a horse, but it did have one toe. In fact, it actually had a more radical digit reduction than members of genus Equus do, or even Equidae, family Equidae, right? So in Equidae, there's one big metacarpal, right, that is for digit 3, which is your middle finger, which is the one toe that horses actually have on every single one of their feet. But beside it are actually digits 2 and 4 metacarpals, and they're called splint bones. And they don't have any real function that anyone knows of. They don't stick out from the skin or anything, but they're there. But in Thoatherium, even those were gone. So this is a more actually extreme version of digit reduction in Thoatherium. And that's what Ken is talking about. Now, it is also the case that there are 3-toed Leptopterns above Thoatherium in this fossil record. But there are also things that look like transitional fossils from more basal Leptopterns to Thoatherium and its one-toed condition. So basically, Kent is just mixing up animals from entirely different orders, right? This is about as silly as saying, like, oh, you know, this wolf is actually the closest relative, not of, like, I don't know. This thing is actually a pangolin. If you don't know what pangolins are, you should find out. They're great. So anyway, I wanted to point out that I got that slightly off last week, when I said nodoungulates. They're not nodoungulates. They are Leptopterns. All right, a couple things. Dapper's Pelagic PhD for 100 Argentinian peso says, I don't think ornithology is hiding the bird from you. You might have just seen a concept bird, and the info will be updated when the CIA releases the official version. You know, you might be right about that. And then Renee, who's been a member for 7 months and is at the amulet level, says, ooh, I caught the stream decently early. Yes, you did. Yeah, we were pretty early in. Right. Here we go.
Absolutely reverse order from what is predicted by the theory. Now, the way theories are supposed to work, you create a theory, you look for evidence. If you find evidence that says, hey, this theory is wrong, well, then you throw the theory away and you get a new one.
You know, I feel like Kent is describing a different thing than theory. I think he's describing what is often called a hypothesis. Also, Christopher Canadatheus, who's been a member for 16 months and is at the annual level, says, Kent Hovind is the Richard Carrier of Rogers rattlesnakes. Yes. I wonder which geology bits Roger thinks are rattlesnakes.
And that happens all through science, except when it comes to evolution.
Alex Markle. Oh my goodness.
Uh-oh.
Oh no. Alex Markle says he checked the list of birds and it was on there. What is happening right now? Why is it gone? Well, this is unfortunate. I don't even know why I'm getting an ad for what looks like K-pop.
Yeah, me neither.
Yeah, that's weird. Hey, close the window. Well, we'll open it back up. We didn't get very far, so we didn't miss much.
The 3-toed horses are on top. The 1-toed horses are on the bottom. Absolutely reverse order from what is predicted by the theory. Now, the way theories are supposed to work, you create a theory, you look for evidence. If you find evidence that says, hey, this theory is wrong, well, then you throw the theory away and you get a new one. And that happens all through science, except when it comes to evolution.
Actually, no. There hasn't been a theory overturned in, like, coming up on a century at this point, right? Because a theory isn't a hypothesis. That's what Kent is talking about, is a hypothesis, right? Where you come up with an idea that's an explanation for a particular phenomenon, and then you go and test it. A theory is a collection of related explanations and related hypotheses, which correlate many kinds of data and has been rigorously tested for a very long time, which is why they tend not to get overturned very often. Because to get to be a theory, you already have to be at the point where it's extremely unlikely that these set of ideas are going to be disconfirmed. So that's what Kent is describing is more accurately called a hypothesis. Now, of course, it's no surprise to anyone that Kent doesn't really know the difference between a hypothesis and theory, but, you know. All right, we got a few super chats to read right here. Rosana Ripsneck Keller says, K-pop malware? No, I doubt it was K-pop malware. I mean, if it were, I would expect to see a whole lot more K-pop. And that was the only time I think I've ever seen random K-pop ad, so. Savage 1080 Radiometric Pixels Cobra for $2 says, K-pop is much better in the original Klingon. You know, funny you should mention that, because Strange New Worlds in their musical episode has some dance moves that look a little bit K-pop inspired when the Klingons call up the Enterprise to threaten them. So, and then DM the Hyrasa Theorem Wing says for $2, surprise Klingon pop. Gojira. We'll take a drink for the Godzilla. So, yeah. There we go.
Because this theory is foundational for many other things, like a new world order coming soon to a city near you.
This tape was made like 20-something years ago. I feel like there hasn't been a whole lot of movement on that whole New World Order thing. I don't know, Vince. Do you feel like you're in the New World Order?
It happened in professional wrestling.
Oh, okay.
In America.
Okay.
So WWE.
It did happen.
They had something called the New World Order. I don't really know about it. I think it was just a collection of certain wrestlers.
That is very strange.
But that's the only thing I've heard of World Order in the real world.
Okay.
Since this video was recorded.
Okay? They're never found in the order presented.
I mean, that's just not true, right? We've already established that, right? The most basal horses, equids, I should say, are the first ones that we find. It's just that basal forms persist with more derived forms, which is what we should expect if evolution is true.
Three-toed and one-toed horses are found side by side in the same strata.
Yeah. Just like we find humans and other apes in the same strata, just like we find living today trumpet fish and sea dragons and seahorses. There we go, which are just less and less basal members of Signathiformes, right? Like we see all of this stuff today as a result of evolution, because the point of evolution is a branching pattern, right? Things don't always just go extinct and because the new thing has evolved. Older, more basal forms persist. Like, for instance, tarsiers are fairly basal when it comes to primates, right? They have wet noses. They don't have all of the things that make most primates what they are, like monkeys or apes or whatever. But they're still primates, and they retain a lot of the very basal primate traits that you might have found from, like, these adapiforms, the earlier, somewhat polyphyletic sort of evolutionary grade of early primates. And that's okay. It's fine. Because nothing about evolution says that basal forms have to go extinct.
How can one be the ancestor to the other?
Well, at that point, they're not, right? One group has retained the basal traits. The other group has developed more derived traits, and their common ancestor was morphologically closer to the group that has retained the basal traits. That's all that's happened, right? One lineage has changed a little bit less. So it's sort of like if you were like on Ancestry.com, right? And you were looking into like your great-great-grandfather, and you find out that like your second cousin or something looks more like your great-great-grandfather than you do. Okay, maybe he just happened through circumstances to have more of your great-great-grandfather's DNA left. He happens to look more like him. Or maybe your ancestry just has more admixture from distant locations around the globe. Now you just have, more DNA that's not from that particular area, which means you look less typically like a person where your great-great-grandfather was from. It's a similar deal, right? It's not exactly the same, because, there's genealogy versus phylogeny, and they're not the same thing, but they're similar conceptually. That's all this is. sometimes the descendants of a common ancestor look more like that common ancestor than other descendants do.
Now, the evolutionist will say to this one, they'll say, well, that's because the three-toed were gradually being phased out, and the one-toed, are better, and they took over, but you just happened to find two in the same area during...
That's not at all what I would say. I want to point out, Kent is now predicting what I should have said. And the fact that that's not what I would say, and I don't think it's what anyone I know who's all involved in either science communication or just evolutionary biology, I don't think it's what any of them would say. What that tells you is that Kent doesn't actually understand what he's talking about. Kent doesn't know anything about evolutionary biology.
the time that they were being, phased out. I'm sorry. You can believe that if you want, but that's not science.
I mean, you know what, Kent? That's right. It's not science. We'll take a drink for that. Good job, Kent.
Frank Sherwin,
yay,
friend of mine, has at Institute for Creation Research, has a lot of information on the horse evolution if you want to get a hold of him.
Wow. At this point, Kent still had friends at the Institute for Creation Research, which is interesting because at this point in his life, like now, here in 2024, Kent is a pariah among other young Earth creationists. Basically, the only ones who seem to be willing to still talk to him. Like, I think he still talks to, what's his name? Carl Baugh. Apparently, Ray Comfort doesn't really call him anymore. ICR, AIG, CMI, they all just ignore his existence to the maximum extent possible. The most I ever see any of them acknowledge him is that some of them have articles about like bad arguments creationists should abandon, and they're basically just like a collection of Kent Hovind's worst arguments. So, yeah, that's as close as most creationists seem to be to acknowledging the existence of Kent Hovind. In part, a lot of that has to do with, his being a convicted felon, the various controversies about he and his family and his current lifestyle and whatnot. But a lot of it actually is to do with just his arguments that are so bad that like even Ken Ham and like Randy Galuza and whatnot are like, no, please don't say this, other creationists. This is really dumb. Rosina Ripsnick Keller for $1.99 says, "Congratulations, Kent, you defeated a straw man." And then Rael Gatubello says, "What I'm going to just go ahead and assume is AIG is a bag of dicks, but in Korean." And says, "Had to do this after the K-pop." I do recognize Korean as Korean when I see it written down, because Hangul is very, very distinct. It's also one of my favorite writing systems. Shipfish, who's been a member for 26 months, said, and is at the Tetrapod level, says, "Love when you drink for Kent being right with a Ghidorah." I'll take a drink for that Ghidorah. Hey, look, right where it's due. Kent is not always wrong about everything, but it's so rare that it has to be a trigger just to celebrate.
And there's in the book Noah to Abram, The Turbulent Years, which we offer through our ministry. It's a really good one that has a section on this horse evolution.
Oh, Frank Sherwin. Oh, goodness. He's that guy that says that there's a satanic conspiracy to disguise the existence of giraffes. Now, okay, I want to be fair to him. He did not explicitly say that there was a satanic conspiracy to hide giraffes. What he said was that there's a satanic conspiracy to hide these animals from you. And among the animals he was talking about, one of them was the giraffe. So, to me, the clear implication is that they, according to Frank Sherwin, there is a satanic conspiracy to hide the existence of giraffes. Which... Oh, and then Dapper's Pelagic PhD points out that he might be Rael Gatubello. Rael Gatubello? I'm going to screw that up. I can guarantee you I'm going to screw that up, Dapper's Pelagic PhD. I'm sorry. All right, here we go.
Which has been proven wrong some time ago. One man named Dan Hicks in Tulsa, Oklahoma, kept after the Tulsa Zoo, saying, "Why do you have this thing on display? It's been proven wrong years ago." I've got all the letters that Dan sent to the zoo, and the zoo sent back to him. When he wrote to the zoo director and said, why don't you take this display down? It's not true. Okay? The director of the zoo wrote back and said, "We don't have the funding to remove it." All the letters that Dan sent to the...
Okay, now I backed up a little bit because I want to read this. Now, I got to say, to respond to his, they just said we don't have the funding. That sounds like a letter from a zoo director who just does not care about this crazy guy's pseudoscience complaints and just wants to shut him up. Now, do I know that that's what happened? No. Am I saying that's what happened? No. I'm just saying that's what it feels like to me. Now, Tulsa Zoo removes evolution exhibit. Tulsa architect Dan Hicks, supported by a petition signed by 2,000 area residents, plus a scientifically conducted poll showing that over 2/3 of the city's population believe that the zoo should not promote evolution, none of which matters because zoos are about science communication, and if it's science, it should be communicated, was able recently to persuade the city officials to remove exhibits depicting horse evolution and human evolution from display at the zoo. So this was not the decision of the zoo director. This was a decision of the city government. Okay. Hicks and his co-workers credited the influence of the Institute for Creation Research Materials with playing a significant part in this action and also suggested that citizens in other communities could undertake similar projects. I mean, yeah, it doesn't surprise me that someplace in like 1995, a bunch of science illiterates got a city council take action against science communication. I mean, you can find places in the United States where city councils have voted to ban water under the name dihydrogen monoxide because they're a bunch of science illiterate. Savage 1080 radiometric pixels Cobra for $5 says, "My city is hiding a few giraffes on public display at the zoo. Very cunning. No one would ever take their kids there." Exactly. All right, here we go.
The zoo, and the zoo sent back to him. When he wrote to the zoo director and said, why don't you take this display down? It's not true. Okay? The director of the zoo wrote back and said, we don't have the funding to remove it. I've got the letters in my file. How much funding does it take to remove a display? I mean,
so it's a city contract, or it's a city-funded zoo, right? So you're going to have to follow the government contracting laws, which usually involve some union labor, which is going to be more expensive. Also, you're going to have them all be insured, because if you just let anyone into your zoo with demolition equipment and then someone gets hurt, which is very likely if you have a bunch of randos going in there with like sledgehammers, that could be the end of the zoo. So chances are you're going to have to pay for at least a few days worth of union wages for some demolition stuff. So, and I mean, I don't know if you guys have ever hired, like union construction demo team, but like, that's not cheap. And even if it's for like 2 days of labor, that could still be several $1,000s just right there for that. And say, well, I'll do it myself, which is something Kent says about a lot of things. Okay, great, but they're not insured, and they have to be. I know Kent isn't insured, and that's why he has everyone basically sign a liability waiver before they're allowed onto his property. But like, that's not an option for the city of Tulsa. They can't just have their zoo be an enter-at-your-own-risk facility. That's not reasonable.
do it for him in 10 minutes, okay?
Yeah. I'm going to take that as a prediction. There we go. And the fact that Kent thinks that it would be a 10-minute job probably tells you just about how good his work is going to be and why he should have some insurance for this.
Give me a screwdriver and a hammer. We'll get it out of there. It's not a problem.
It's going to almost certainly need more than that. You're probably going to need like a sawzall. You might need a torch. Probably are going to need like a sledgehammer for some of this stuff, because this is not just a bunch of signs, right? There's probably going to be like displays that are on sturdy construction. But hey, whatever. I love how little Kent knows about everything, including various trades, that he just thinks that he can just do it himself. And based on reporting coming out of Dinosaur Adventureland from people who've gone there and done a little bit of work, yeah, it's not a safe work environment.
Yeah.
Kent doesn't know anything about construction. He isn't having building inspectors come out to inspect anything. And also, at least allegedly, alleged by people who've worked for him, when it comes to getting his workers things like water, he just gets it from the dirty, untreated well on the property. And like, he will hand out used water bottles. And by used water bottles, I don't just mean like, the dishwasher safe kind. I mean like a water bottle you get from like 7-Eleven. That's a disposable water bottle that he has just rinsed out and refilled with dirty well water. What I'm saying is...
That's disgusting.
Yeah. What I'm trying to tell you is, I don't care if you agree with me. I don't care if you're a creationist, if you're someone who's not a science denier, a Christian, an atheist. do not work construction for Kent Hovind. Just don't. It's not worth the risk of getting sick or injured. Just don't do it. Let's see. Hollyhock, who's been a member for 11 months and is at the annual level, says Kent only runs. Oh yeah, Kent only runs enter at your own risk enterprises with a Godzilla. Yeah, that does seem to be the way it is. We'll take a drink for that Godzilla. Theory 3-toed horse or 3-toed horned toad, Rana, who's been a member for 12 months, is at the tetrapod level, says, think Kent would remove a sign with a stun gun? I don't actually, but it would be funny to watch him try. Because, stun guns apparently fix everything.
Right.
And for $1.99, Rosina Ripsneck Keller says, Kent is whatever the opposite of a polymath is. He's a unimath? Monomath? Is it? Yeah, monomath, I guess it would be. Yeah, Kent is a monomath. The only thing he's good at is, presenting pseudoscience. That's it. Yeah. All right, here we go.
So Dan had to get 2,000 signatures. He took up a petition. 2,000 people signed the petition saying, get this thing out of our zoo. Finally, they took it out.
Yeah, but Ken, it wasn't the zoo director, right? The way you're framing this is contradicted by your previous statement that you put up on screen for us to look at, but that you quickly went past. What actually happened is not that this guy presented these signatures to the zoo director, who was then so overwhelmed by the demand that this perfectly fine, probably sign come down. What actually happened is that his bosses saw the writing on the wall in terms of the unpopularity of evolution among their science illiterate constituency, and decided to bend to the will of the science illiterates. Now, there's a very high chance that a number of the people on the city council were themselves scientifically illiterate, and I'd say that not because, science or city councils are like a low-level government thing, which they kind of are, but still, remember, the current Speaker of the House of the United States of America is an author for Answers in Genesis. Right? And for those of you who aren't, Americans who might not know what the Speaker of the House is, he's the guy in charge of one of the two legislative bodies of the federal government in the United States, and if the president and the vice president dies, he becomes the new president. So he's second in line. He's right after the vice president for being, head of state of the United States, commander-in-chief of the armed forces, all that stuff. That guy has a author's bio page on answers.com, Answers in Genesis website. So, the USA is not a place where science literacy is a requirement for getting into government office. Jillian Huxley, Conspiracy Run, who's been a member for 15 months, says, how long until there is an outbreak of some kind from that well? Pours one out for Sneck with a Mothra, so we'll take a drink for the Mothra. I don't know, because I don't think it's actually the source of most of the water on site. Because I don't think Kent could hook up, running water. But I've seen footage from, the kitchen where they have taps that work. So I think he's hooked up to the city's main water supply for things like the building where the kitchen is. And probably also the laundry, because I think it's the same building. So yeah, I don't know. Plus, I mean, he might boil the water. Possible. I don't think so. But yeah, I don't know. I also don't know what the sewer situation is there. Is there a septic tank? Are they hooked up to the sewer mains? Is it just going into the groundwater, which absolutely would seep into the well? So if it's going into a septic tank or it's hooked up to the city's sewer mains, then I don't think there would be an outbreak from that well. But I don't know if that's actually what's happening. Annoying Newsletter says, is literacy even a requirement? It's not technically a hard requirement, generally speaking, for being elected in the United States. But, I mean, it's an effective requirement, because you're not going to be able to do most of the things that get people elected, like giving speeches and whatnot, unless you're at least minimally literate. So, it's there's no rule, but I would be very shocked if anyone who was illiterate actually made it to, how do I keep screwing this up? Elected office. There we go. I screwed that up, so that's going to be a dapper as a professional. Roasting a Rip Sneck Keller for $1.99 says, Mike Johnson thinks he's the next Moses. Yeah, he certainly seems to act like it sometimes. I don't think I've heard him say that explicitly, but if you sent me something where he did that, I wouldn't be surprised. I will say Kent Hovind has explicitly compared himself to Moses when he said that Cindy Lincoln was like Korah, not Korah from Avatar, Korah from the Bible, who who tried to lead a rebellion against Moses. So if Cindy Lincoln is leading a rebellion against Kent, and she is like Korah, that makes Kent Moses in that analogy. Mark Rose for 199 says Mike Johnson wrote for a bag of Johnsons. Nice. And yes, he did. All right, here we go.
Now, if they had a display in the zoo, like a Christmas scene representing Christ in the manger, one signature would have gotten it out, right? One person would complain about singing some Christmas song in a public school, and they'll take it out.
No, that's not right. That is why routinely school boards and city officials have to be sued to take down religious displays, and then frequently they don't anyway, and instead say, well, other religions are welcome to put up their displays. And then the Church of Satan comes by, puts up a Baphomet statue somewhere, and then a city council member goes by and beheads it. That's what's actually going on. Cities are so dedicated to keeping up things like Christmas displays that they will allow relatively unpopular religions to put things up. They would rather allow all of them to stay up than to take down their Christian symbols. And here's the thing, right? I don't particularly care that much as long as it really is an equal access thing where any religious group can put up their various monuments on their holidays or whatever. If a local Muslim community center wants to put up some decorations for like all of Ramadan, great, have fun with it. You want to have a Diwali display at town hall or whatever? That sounds cool to me. I think Diwali is cool. You want to have like whatever else it is, that's okay by me, right? I'm a big fan of holidays, generally speaking. But just to say that, it would take one signature and that manger would come right down, it's an obvious and blatant lie. If anything, municipalities and things like that in the United States are far more likely to favor Christian displays inappropriately than to simply take them down too soon. Kent is essentially, he's doing that thing that people from communities who generally have hegemonic power in their society tend to do, which is he is seeing being treated fairly as oppression because he was being treated as if he were special because of his demographic membership in a certain class, namely Christian. Christians are not being oppressed in the United States. Now, you might find a particular individual's group who might be oppressed in some weird way, but by and large, oppression of Christianity is not a feature of the United States public life. That is not true everywhere. There are definitely places where you can go, and Christians are an extremely put upon minority. Just not the United States. Now, Savage 1080 Radiometric Pixels Cobra for $5 says, that's why the Dover School Board withdrew their creationist propaganda without even having to take it to court. Yeah, exactly. That's the exact opposite of what happened, which is, I know, that's why you put that in there. But, I mean, it's a great point, right? Why did the Dover School Board have to be sued? Because they didn't want to take this out. Ripsneck Keller for $199 says, Wall-E display? You know what? Sure. I'm okay with a Wall-E display. I have nothing against Wall-E. All right, here we go.
Here you get 2,000 people complain before they finally reluctantly remove the display. But I was up at Peabody Museum. I've been there many times. Every time I go to the Connecticut area, I stop in the Peabody just to keep my blood boiling, because they still have the horse evolution on display there.
Good. They should. Now, my current take on this right now is that at least that series of heads on the left does seem to portray some kind of orthogenetic process. And I can't tell what the display is above that skeleton because it's cut off by Kent's little label. So, like, I don't know. Also, is this actually a display made by O.C. Marsh? Because, like, I don't know. Those heads don't really look like they were, like, pre-war era art, but I don't actually know. So, I'm a little suspicious that this is the exact display that Marsh created. But hey, maybe I'm wrong.
New Haven, Connecticut. Yeah. Did I say Connecticut, right? When I get it.
You did say Connecticut, Kent.
Boston. Okay, it's in Connecticut. Yeah. While I stood there by that display,
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Love Tree Music 1 says, doesn't the Creation Museum accept the horse evolution sequence? By and large, yes. Their models of the... so, I'll back up a little bit. Ancestors in Genesis has the idea that the quote-unquote kinds were what was brought on the Ark. And that rather than bringing on every species, Noah was able to take on just representative members of each quote-unquote kind. And when they say that, what they default to is just, if it ends in IDAE, then that taxon is probably a kind. So Equidae is one of those taxa that ends in IDAE. It's the family level taxon. So their common ancestor of Equidae is actually Mesohippus, which is a three-toed equid, which means that at least from the point of Mesohippus on, yeah, Ancestors in Genesis does accept the horse sequence. Yep. So all of this complaining about how this horse sequence doesn't count and, oh, this was all terrible. One, for most creationists, the entire horse sequence is actually above the flood boundary. So, explain that. But two, yeah, most creationists today just accept the majority of the horse sequence as just actual evolution, although they would call it microevolution, even though it's actually macroevolution. Because, you know, creationists have to get everything wrong.
hundreds of kids came through. School group after school group. I mean, all day long, there's groups of parents and teachers bringing their kids through these museums. Never one word was said about this being wrong.
Because it's largely not. Remember, when Kent earlier was using quotations to say that the horse evolution thing was wrong, what he was actually using was quotes saying that it wasn't orthogenetic. But, Ben, what do you think? Do you think Kent could define orthogenesis?
No,
No.
of course not.
He couldn't even define dinosaur, and he calls himself Dr. Dino. So, yeah. Let's see. Ripsneck Keller for $1.99 says, excluding hominidae. Yeah, that is an important area where they do not put it at the family level. And Rael Gatubello for $2 says, then hominidae is a kind too, right? Right? Which is, the same point that, yeah, you're both made. And yeah, that is an interesting point in that, no, they do make a special exception for hominidae. They actually still use the old category Pongidae for the great apes, which is not a thing. And they do generally say that chimps, gorillas, and orangutans all form a kind, which is weird because, orangutans are less like gorillas than gorillas are like chimps. And yet chimps are even more like humans than they are like gorillas. So if you're going to put all of those as a single kind, you kind of have to include humans because they are deeply nested inside that group. Right?
Yeah.
So, yeah, it's sort of like saying that, all felids are a kind, except for cheetahs. What do you mean, not cheetahs? Why not cheetahs? They're deeply within that group. It's like, no, I don't like it. Like, oh, okay, I guess. Seems weird. Seems like special pleading, but that's okay. I mean, it's not actually okay, but I can't do anything about it.
Now, it's never been true, but it was demonstrated to be wrong 50 years ago.
Nope. It was demonstrated not to be orthogenetic about 50 years ago, when the whole idea of orthogenesis was going away. Now, I know I covered it last time, but real quick, this time, orthogenesis is this now defunct idea about evolution, where certain lineages would have, evolutionary momentum, right? So, the most classic example is that it used to be thought that Brontotheres, which were a group of mammals from, I think, the Miocene, but double check me on that, I don't actually remember. Basically, they were rhinos before rhinos evolved. And the idea was, well, they had this trend to just get bigger and bigger and get fancier and fancier head ornaments, which weren't technically horns, but whatever. They looked like horns. And that eventually they just got too big with too heavy of skulls. They all just died. And they did that because they were just on that evolutionary trajectory. Well, it turns out later, people actually did rigorous statistical analyses on the various known Brontothere groups. And it turns out that that idea just wasn't supported. There was no just general trend among the entire group towards bigger size and fancier head ornamentation. And it also contradicted things like natural selection. How could an organism evolve in a direction that makes them less fit if natural selection is true? They largely can't, unless they're very, very small, because then genetic drift can take over, which is the problem with, having low genetic diversity and a low population size. And so basically orthogenesis was discarded. Now, that was after things like the horse sequence had been discovered, and it was presented orthogenetically. But since we've learned that orthogenesis is just not how evolution works, kind of backed off on that. Now, Vandalia in 1998 for $2 says, also bacteria were a whole domain as a kind. Yeah, creationists do like to treat the entire domain of bacteria and archaea, like basically prokaryotes. They'll just treat that as a whole kind, which is bonkers. There's far more diversity within bacteria than there is just like within vertebrates. You're far more closely related to a hagfish than any two random bacteria are likely to be.
How many kids have been brainwashed by seeing this? See, the average...
None. Literally none. Because that's not what brainwashing is. What brainwashing is, is when you take an ex-con fresh out of incarceration that you picked up at the gas station and bring him to your cult compound in rural Alabama and tell him that you will give him room and board in exchange for his otherwise unpaid labor, and then isolate him so he has no real way on or off the property except by your permission, and he has no place to live except by your permission, and he has no documented employment, which means that he has nothing to put on a resume, which will make it harder for him to get any other job besides working for you for free, except for room and board. Now, does what I just described as, brainwashing someone into loyalty to your weird Alabama cult sound like anyone we know of?
A little bit.
A little bit? Yeah, that's because I'm directly describing Kent Hovind. Kent Hovind brainwashes people. Now, I don't think that everyone who listens to a Kent Hovind seminar is being brainwashed, right? There's a difference between saying things that are not true and brainwashing. But Kent runs a compound in which he exerts extreme amounts of pressure, both economic and spiritual, if you will, onto people who are in extremely precarious situations to trick them into being permanent residents on his compound doing labor for him. That's brainwashing. It doesn't even matter if he's right or wrong. Right? He could be 100% right about evolution and creation and all this stuff. And the fact that's how he gets at least some of his residents, I would say that means he's brainwashing people. People being presented with an overly orthogenetic view of horse evolution, that's just some, not quite right in the details science. That's all that is.
Student in school, he reads his textbook, and then he goes to a museum, and he sees this stuff on display, and he thinks, well, it must be true, it's been proven. So,
I don't like the word proof, but yeah, basically.
To try to get this stuff out of the textbooks, that's not trying to get the Bible in. I just want this out.
I will take a drink. That is technically true. Kent is more likely to advocate for things to be removed from the textbook than he is to introduce evolution. Take a drink. Basically, Kent would rather that students be uneducated about science than that they be miseducated. Now, of course, his ideal would be that there is no public education, and every school is like a private Christian school that can teach as much Christianity as they want. However, publicly, when he advocates for policy about public schools, he does favor less education rather than miseducation. And I don't know that that's better, but it is different. And so I do want to acknowledge that it's different. So, yeah. You guys can decide for yourselves whether miseducation is better or worse than undereducation.
I just spent the last half hour talking to one of the Arkansas representatives from the state of Arkansas in Little Rock. He's a representative there. He was at the seminar I did a couple of weeks ago in Springdale, Arkansas.
So, okay, this is Kent confirming that city councils are not just full of evil atheists who will take down a Christian display at the drop of a hat. Good to know. Good to know that Kent can keep his characterization of, city government straight for an entire paragraph.
He said, Brother Hovind, I'm a representative here in the House of Representatives, and you've got a bunch of Christians up here in the House and in the Senate that love your material, and we are going to write a law, try to pass a law that requires the Arkansas textbooks to be accurate.
Okay.
And we're going to say in the law, Arkansas will not provide funding for any books that contain the following information.
That's a different law. I want to... Now, I don't know that this happened. In fact, I suspect strongly that it didn't. And if it continues to be ridiculous, and we're going to take a drink for stories that didn't happen. However, I want to point out that a law saying you are not allowed to say these things in a textbook, one, is almost certainly going to fail any constitutional challenge, right? Freedom of expression is one of the most core parts of the United States Constitution that actually receives protection from the courts. It's one of the only parts that receives protection from the courts in any rigorous fashion. So, like, yeah, that law would fail almost certainly. And it's also different from being accurate, because you know who's not equipped to tell what claims in science are accurate? Your average city councilman, or your average state senator or state representative. So, like, yeah, many states actually have laws requiring textbooks to be accurate. And they do not, for that reason, exclude things like the horse transitional series or evolution broadly, because those things are broadly accurate. And yeah, textbooks tend to be 10 to 15 years out of date, but that's just because, I mean, that's the textbook industry, right? You're not getting the cutting edge research in a textbook. You're getting the basic stuff.
Wow. About time. Every state ought to do that, you know.
Look, I will agree every state should have a law saying that textbooks must be accurate. I do not think any state should ever pass a law requiring that textbooks not have a certain particular list of things. Because then that means that you have decided by your own legislative fiat what truth is. And legislatures are not equipped to determine what truth is, by and large. It's one of the reasons I'm skeptical about impeachment processes broadly, right? Because there are always a bunch of legislators doing political theater instead of actually trying to find out about the truth of things. That's why there are far fewer impeachments than there should be, and why of those impeachments that occur, they virtually all result in an acquittal, because it was never about the truth. It was only ever about politics. Crush for the Croc Score, who's been a member for 4 months, said, and at the Tetrapod level says, "It do be real dino hours. Rip snack that bit Kent." Yes, rest in peace to that tiny little snake. I feel far worse for that snake than I do for Kent Hovind. That snake did nothing wrong. Kent Hovind has done virtually nothing but wrong.
I said, you send me your textbooks, I'll go through them with a fine-tooth comb, and I'll tell you what needs to be removed.
That would be a terrible idea, given how little Kent understands science.
There's an excellent book, if you want all of the documentation on this type of stuff, written just 1999.
Oh, that recently, huh?
Icons of Evolution.
I've read that book. I've actually read, like, 2 editions of that book. It's basically just a bunch of actual transitional fossils that are held up, and the book gives you bad reasons for why they're not transitional. That never actually involves the fact that they are a mixture of basal and derived traits from certain groups, which means that they are definitionally transitional fossils, and then relies on things like, well, this probably wasn't the direct ancestor of so-and-so, so it doesn't count. Yeah, great. Doesn't matter. It's an atrocious book, is what I'm saying. It's also extremely out of date anyway, so.
It's only available in hardback, so it's kind of expensive.
I feel like I have a paperback copy of it, or at least had. I don't know, maybe that was true when Ken said that.
But it is really tremendous. He goes through 15 different chapters, each chapter, one whole chapter about the horse evolution.
Hey, Kent, does that mean that he actually has a chapter in his book for every chapter that he says is in his book in his table of contents? Because that means he did better than your dissertation, which has like 4 chapters despite the promised like 16. So,
roasted.
Yeah.
One whole chapter about the gill slits, you know. You want to document where things have been proven wrong, this guy has done a marvelous job. And I don't know if he's a creationist or an evolutionist.
Jonathan Wells is a member of the Discovery Institute. He is an anti-evolutionist. Now, he probably does accept more common ancestry than Kent would, because that's pretty common for Discovery Institute guys, but he is certainly not someone I would describe as not a creationist. Now, if you're wondering what Kent is talking about with the gill slits, basically he's talking about pharyngeal clefts. So during embryonic development, one of the characteristics of chordates is that they have pharyngeal arches or pouches and pharyngeal clefts. Now, in most chordates that have ever existed, the clefts turn into where the gills go, right? So like in relatively basal fish like lampreys, those little spherical-like gills, they develop from the clefts. In more advanced like actinopterygian fish, like bass or trout or tuna, they actually form the gill slits that you see on most fish. in most tetrapods, the clefts don't really form anything in particular, but the actual pharyngeal pouches or arches turn to various structures like the jawbone, ear bones, various glands, and whatnot. And the interesting thing is that the arches in most fish, non-tetrapods, turn into the actual arches of the gill, the structure that holds the gill up. But in the most primitive jawed fish, it's very clear that the jawbones are actually derived gill arches, which tells you why it is that your jawbone, and for mammals, your ear bones, which are originally derived from jawbones, develop from the pharyngeal arches. That whole aspect of embryology only makes sense when you look at it from an evolutionary standpoint. There's no good reason why a arch that makes gill arches should also make your ear bones, unless you realize that the sequence was gill arch to jaw to ear. And then it makes sense. You can even, in some embryos of certain mammals, actually watch the inner ear bones form from pharyngeal arches into the area of the jaw and then migrate through embryological development into the inner ear, the middle ear, during embryonic development from being at the base of the jaw. And then you can also see it happen in fossils. We have fossil mammals like Proboscis, where you have double jaw joints, and you can watch as these fossils go up through geological time throughout the Permian and whatnot, as those ear bones go from being jaw bones to ear bones. The whole evolution of mammals is so well documented, including this whole pharyngeal arch thing that Kent loves to complain about, that it is amazing evidence of the common ancestry of just chordates generally. Now, Joshua Geese has just gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. And they went to Dr. Wrong. Let's see. Tramp Abandon All Hope, Ye Who Enter Here stamp. Which sounds like a really great tramp stamp, by the way. Just actually get Abandon All Hope, Ye Who Enter Here as a tramp stamp. Let's see. Alien Bird and Damian McLagan. And also Arthur Burdick were all gifted memberships. Thank you so much. We will take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And with that, we are going to take a quick break so that I can get a fresh can of this tea. And yeah, we will be right back in just a few minutes. And there's a Godzilla, and we'll drink a drink for the Godzilla. Everybody, in the intervening time, I know how to speak English. This is a language I know. It's my first language. Don't worry about it. We're going to listen to some musical stylings of Beethoven, which is you.
Yay!
All right. See you in a few minutes, everybody. All right, we are back. Welcome back, everybody. Thank you for those of you who stuck with me, which looks like essentially everyone. So thank you very much. I really do appreciate that. Love True Music 1 for $2 says, Ben's rendition of 433 is amazing. Thank you very much. And we will add that super chat to the running total. All right, so now that we're back, before we continue on, I'll give my quick after the break talk. I think I forgot last week, but that's okay. Look, this channel is almost entirely supported directly by you, the viewers. Almost none of what I get from this channel in terms of financial compensation comes from Google. I have not taken a sponsorship so far. I'm not ruling it out, but so far, none of the companies that have asked have been companies that I felt comfortable taking a sponsorship from. That's because I'm pretty picky about it. I don't want to hawk a product that I don't believe in, and that I don't think that everyone in my audience has at least a decent chance of appreciating if they got it, which is very few products out there. So with that being said, what that means is that almost all of it comes from places like Patreon, the memberships, super chats, super thanks, gifted memberships, stuff like that, right? So if you are interested in supporting the channel and you're currently not supporting it financially, you'd like to change that, and you can importantly afford to do that. If it's actually in the budget, if you have spare money at the end of the month or whatever, there are a number of ways that if you want to give some of it to me that you can. Obviously, there's super chatting and super thanks and gifting memberships. Those are always amazing ways to help. But there's also, if you want to be a little bit more regular about it and something I can more easily budget for, there's ways to do that either monthly or annually. First of all is Patreon. Patreon's where I get to keep most of the money, or the most of the money that you give me. I get to keep a majority everywhere. But anyway, that starts at only $1 a month. It can go all the way to $100 a month if you want to. You can get a 15% discount if you go annually. There's a Patreon linked in the description. There's also one for Bent Hovend. That is one of the best ways. For my Patreon, you get access to the Dapper Dinosaur members and patrons only Discord server. You get early access to all my scripted videos. I just uploaded one today. I do have to tweak a few things on it in YouTube, so it probably won't be available for early access until tomorrow, but still, there's a brand new hour and was it 6 minutes or something video, I think, something like that. Hour and 5 minute 33-second video that just tomorrow you'll have early access to if you want it. So that's on the Patreon. You can also join the channel. There's a join button right below this, and that starts at $1.99. It can go all the way up to $20 if you want to. There's no discount on that one, but it also gets you access to the same Discord server, gets you access to the same early access videos, usually only seconds apart between Patreon and channel members. You get access to also having your name in green, a fancy little badge next to your name, as well as the little channel emojis. Rael Gatubello says, I'm a member. How do I join the Discord? So here's what you do. You go to your Discord, go to settings, go to connections, link your YouTube account that you have the membership with to your Discord, and then below that there should be a list of servers that you can join as a result of your memberships. You want to find mine, it's probably just going to be called Dapper Dinosaur Discord server, something like that, and click it, and you will be a member of the Discord server. And if your membership lapses, there's, I think, a 2-week grace period during which you stay a member of the Discord server, even though you're not currently paying for it, in case you want to re-up your membership or your Patreon. So that's how you do that. Let's see. If Patreon or the channel memberships aren't your thing, but you're still interested in helping out, there's also a merch store. If you look down below this video, there should be a shelf full of merch from Teespring. If none of that catches your eye, feel free to click through on any of them. It'll bring you to the Teespring store, and then you can search an even wider array of merch that I have, because it's not all on the shelf. There's also, both Bent and I have Amazon wish lists linked in the description. If you want to just get us get one of us a snack or a book or something like that, a lot of stuff in there. I just recently added a whole bunch of stuff onto there. I added every single Vassum RPG book, a new variety of ramen, some almond snacks or something. Oh, hey, it's Godzilla. Drink for Godzilla. All right, and hey, no matter what, if you want to help the channel out, the free and easy way is to like my videos, including this one, share my videos, including this one, and watch a few videos in a row. All right, Borg Emporia is calling in tonight. Thanks for the entertainment. Thank you for watching, Borg Emporia. You have a wonderful night. And let's get back into this Kent Hovind video, because that is enough of a commercial for now.
Doesn't matter. He's a researcher. Okay, you can get it through our ministry, through our bookstore out here. What they'll do, though, for the textbook.
Wait, isn't Jonathan Wells the Mooney from the Discovery Institute? I think he is. I think he's the member of the Unification Church.
Books, they will arrange some animals in order, like this one. Shows, you know, the one bigger animal on top and a smaller animal.
Hey, those are Brontotheres. Awesome. That's the group of animals I was talking about that helped like disprove orthogenesis. Oh, that's so cool.
Thanks.
Yeah. Look, I don't think Kent knows what those are, but I appreciate that he showed a sequence of Brontotheres. I think he thinks they're probably rhinos, even though they're very much not rhinos. But no, Brontotheres are super cool. If you take something away from today's show, is that you should look into Brontotheres. I missed $2 super chats. I did. Oh my goodness. Thank you very much. Roasting a Ripsneck Keller for $1.99 says, drink for Dapper as a professional. That's fair. I'll take a drink. And Renee for $2 says, you forgot to play the music Dapper as a professional. I don't think there is music for that. Oh, wait. Wait, there was no music in the intermission video? Oh my goodness. I think you're right. Oh goodness. Well, my apologies for that. Yeah, that's not great. Oops. My bad. That sucks. All right, here we go.
Animal on the bottom. Now, what's that do psychologically for the student who sees this? He thinks, wow, this is proof. Putting pictures on a page in a book is not evidence.
I mean, that's technically true. We'll take a drink. But here's the thing that it is, though. What it is a depiction of the evidence, right? How are you supposed to get across the actual evidence for evolution in Brontotheres to a student, apart from by putting it in pictures in a book, right? I mean, they're not going to be able, in a high school setting, that to take a look at like character state tables that were actually used in like a cladistics analysis, right? Like if you looked at a series of data points where there's ones and zeros and maybe occasionally twos, depending on how you're scoring this character matrix, right? And it has things like elongate nasal bone or like spatulate tooth shape or something like that, followed by like a whole bunch of names of taxa that are just oblique scientific names, followed by ones and zeros, and then the occasional, like I said, two, depending on how you're scoring the matrix. What is that going to mean to anyone? Like Ben, if I listed off 20 different scientific names of animals, none of which you recognized, and there were a bunch of anatomical terms, very few of which you recognized, and then there was a bunch of like binary data combining the two, what would you get out of that?
First of all, you do that like every day. And I don't get anything out of it because I don't understand it.
But what if someone who does understand it figured out what it meant as far as the likely ancestry of those organisms, and then drew a little tree and put some pictures on it? Could you get something out of that?
Absolutely.
Yeah. That's why they do it, because students aren't equipped to go through the actual cladistic analysis. DM Harasso 2 says there's no such thing as two. You keep telling yourself that, Bender. You keep telling yourself that.
It's evidence you have a good imagination.
Dougie D for $1.99 says, caught you live, first time in a long time. Well, welcome. I'm glad you did.
This is brainwashing, folks. First of all, they don't find animals in the order that they predict. And even if you do find an animal buried on top of another animal, it doesn't prove they're related.
Okay, we'll get to that after I read the super chat. Bentelli 1998 for $5 says, I might be misremembering, but weren't Brontotheres either the largest or second largest land animals? Well, they're definitely not the largest, because the largest land animals turns out to have been a rhino relative called Indricotheres and Indricotheridae, which is another group of those parasodactyls that you probably haven't heard of. But they're much more closely related to rhinos than to anything else. They're within Tapiromorpha, and closer to rhinos than to tapirs. So we now have 69 in super chats. Nice. Let's see. So yeah, they are very, very large, but they are not the largest. As far as second largest, I mean, I guess it depends on how big a net you're casting with your taxa. Because you could just argue that the second largest was just the second largest Indricothere species, which I guess. But if you're casting it like at the family level, like in Trichotheridae versus another family, then that might be true, but I would have to double check. I don't actually have the like the size stats for Brontotheres just in my brain. Sorry. So, yeah. All right. Let's get more Kent. Also, I just poured my second of these into my cup. Now I have another fresh drink that will no longer be watered down.
Doesn't prove anything.
Okay, right. So, things on top of each other, yes. No one is arguing that the evolutionary relationships are demonstrated solely by geographic proximity combined with ordering in the stratigraphic column, right? That's not enough to demonstrate relationship, and no one is using that on its own to demonstrate relationship. In fact, you have to do a lot of work to demonstrate relationship that has to do with actually looking at the anatomy, and if possible, the proteomic or genomic information about whatever species is under consideration. Now, for fossil taxa like Brontotheres, or like the earliest equids, proteomic and genomic data is probably not going to be available very easily. Proteomic, by the way, the proteome is just this amino acid sequence of all the proteins in an organism. Similar to the genome, except it's for proteins and amino acid sequences. So in most cases, those are very hard to recover from fossil species, unless they're very, very recent. So you usually don't have that. But you do not simply rely on the fact that something is found higher and nearby. That is not what happens. Babby, who's been a member for 2 months, is at the amniote level, says, I like listening to Dapper Dino, easy on the ears, tickly to my brain. Well, thank you very much. Also, Babby is one of my very loyal patrons over on Patreon, so thank you very much for that. All right, so let's hit play on this.
Look, if I get buried on top of a hamster,
okay,
does that prove he's my grandpa?
No. But also, burial, intentional burial, involves a reworking of the strata, which means that, and by the way, reworking is something you can detect in geology. You can tell if something has been reworked. Which means that it would be very unlikely that you would even be dated to the same time as the sediment that you're buried in because of signs of reworking. We actually have known fossil beds with reworking. There are multiple Appalachian coal mines that actually contain Mesozoic dinosaur bones that were reworked into them, and they were actually from higher strata, and we can tell because other chunks of the matrix that are actually of Mesozoic age have been worked into the Paleozoic coal layers. This is like a well-known phenomenon, right? There have also been human finds that aren't fossils, but are actually just more relatively recent human remains. By relatively recent, I mean like, be 8,000 years ago. But they're reworked in older strata. So reworking is a thing, but when you find things that haven't been reworked, then that does tell you something about when those organisms died. But in order to determine if they're related or how related they are, you again have to actually look at the biology. No one cares in terms of biology. Okay, that's not fair. The determining factor in relatedness has nothing to do with the exact location of organisms. The importance of the location is so that you can give a geological context, which then informs your dating methods, right? And whether or not your purported age for fossils is reasonable. And if people want to find more instances of similar specimens, where they would have to go. That's why reporting the location is important. That's why Mark Armitage failed, because as I recently learned, here's a fun thing, here's a preview of things to come. Mark Armitage, who gave one of the worst versions of a location for his alleged Triceratops horn ever, which was a 40-acre plot of land in the middle of nowhere, turns out that actually, that isn't where he even found the horn. I got the GPS coordinates for where he found that horn recently, and it's not inside that 40-acre plot of land. Oops.
You don't need to be a rocket scientist to figure this out.
I mean, being a rocket scientist wouldn't help at all, because that's not a paleontologist, but okay.
It doesn't prove a thing. So just because you find fossil A here, and fossil B here, and fossil C here, so?
Well, if you consistently find more derived forms above the earliest of the basal forms, and your cladistic analysis confirms the basal versus derived relationship in those organisms, then that's good evidence of an actual evolutionary sequence. And here's the thing, you might say, well, how do we know that our cladistics and our phylogenetic techniques work? And the answer is, we've checked, right? There have been numerous studies that have done things like taken a single colony of bacteria, separated them out into separate petri dishes, and then grown them, and then taken those resulting colonies and separate them out into new petri dishes again. And so the group of researchers who were, actually growing these bacterial colonies, they have an actual objective observed phylogeny that they don't need to test, right? They know exactly what the phylogeny is because they're the ones who created it. They know exactly what the phylogenetic relationship between these groups is. And then they ask other researchers to go use actual evolutionary biology techniques to recover the most likely phylogeny of these bacteria. And they consistently get it right. This is something we can actually check. We know that the techniques of evolutionary biology actually successfully recover the actual relationship between known organisms that have a known phylogeny because we observe the phylogeny, we created the phylogeny. How do you explain that except by evolution when it comes to other organisms? We know it works because we test it, and it consistently works. All right, let's see. Lance's Fossil Corner for $5 says, if the speed of stupid arguments measured in kph, Kents per hour. I like that. And so I now declare that is in fact how you measure that. And then Kiwi H for 2 Kiwi bucks. We're gonna go with Kiwi bucks. Says putting words on the wall doesn't mean it's true. Correct. All right, here we go.
You found 3 bones in the dirt. That's all you found. You don't know any relationship.
On initially finding them, true. But that's why you do more science, Kent. That's why what happens is that people find a bunch of bones and then they just kind of eyeball it and they're like, that looks like an evolutionary sequence to me. And then it goes in the textbook. That isn't what happens. You can actually read papers about the phylogeny and the cladistic analysis of various fossil organisms. They're just papers. You can go read them. Now, you might have to get around paywalls or whatever. Just don't go to sci-hub.se. Just don't do that, because that's piracy. We don't approve of that. So, don't do that. But you can just read the paleontology papers. You can read the cladistic analysis. You can see how they scored their matrix. And the thing is, it's essentially the same thing that creationists do when they're trying to figure out the relationship between animals that they think are related. Like when creationists want to figure out the family tree of like ursids, the bears, which they think of as a kind typically, they do the same basic techniques. They just don't allow larger groups of animals to have this done because then it would, obviously demonstrate too much. So they cherry pick their data. And then Savage, 1080 radiometric pixels Cobra, has gifted 5 Dapper Dinosaur memberships. They went to Godseed, 3 Can Sam, Lord Crocodile Squirrel, Troy Martin, and 3 of Crows. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let's take 5 drinks. Here we go. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. Here we go.
I've been doing years and years of research, though, on the evolution of the fork.
Hey, Bent. Same question I always ask.
No, forks do not reproduce.
They don't? Oh, weird. Okay, so this is a useless analogy, huh?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Based on very, very fragmentary evidence I have found over the years, I've been able to piece together how forks evolved.
Now, hold on, Bent. Are you telling me that the salad forks in the drawer aren't the offspring of, like, the dinner forks that are larger?
No, they are not.
Well, there goes my entire idea about how salad forks get made. So I've been this whole time when I've been waiting for the salad forks to grow into dinner forks, like that's just never going to happen. This is disappointing. I am disappointed.
No, it won't.
I want you to know, folks, I put a lot of research into this, all non-taxpayer funded. This was just privately on a private grant from my wife. I was allowed to research the evolution of silverware. I believe after intensive research...
By the way, that would be wife number 1, not number 2, Mary Toko, or number 3, Cindy Lincoln, or number 4, Julie of, as far as I know, unknown maiden name. Not any of those, right? The first one. Joe opened.
I discovered, of course, many things that did not survive, mutants that, weren't quite usable for some reason, and so they were thrown away. But I believe that knives probably came first. Very simple. Notice nice, neat, clean lines, not complicated at all.
Ironically, he's literally correct about the order of the development of tools. Simple cutting instruments were, in fact, the first human-modified tools to come into existence. So, like, okay. I mean, if you want to use this as an analogy, he is right in that there is a sort of evolution among human tool design, or around human tool design, and that knives, in fact, are one of the earliest tools, especially for food preparation. So, Goop23 for $2 says, no, Patrick, a fork is not an organism. Thank you very much. I do appreciate the SpongeBob reference. Let's see. All right, here we go.
Slowly, over many millions of years, the knife evolved to a spoon. Great geological pressures would squeeze it and dish it out, made it wider. We just happened to...
Do you think that Kent thinks that geological processes physically alter organisms by squishing them, and that that's how evolution works? Because that's what he just described for the fork, or sorry, the knife evolving into a spoon. And
it's just more evidence that Kent has no idea what evolution actually is.
Yeah, he really, really doesn't. Because that, I don't know if you guys know this, but that's not how that works. Let's see. Savage 1080 Radiometric Pixels Cobra for $2 says, is a tuning fork the same kind? Well, you would have to ask a 5-year-old. Because that is, of course, the ultimate in biological authority is the 5-year-old test, where you take a group of things and you ask a 5-year-old which one is not like the other. But also, drink for Godzilla. All right, here we go.
Get them that have the curved side on the right side to be useful to us. Can you imagine if spoons were all curved on the wrong side?
I don't even know what that means. Just turn it around. What are you talking about, the wrong side? You can flip things around, Kent. What? That was too stupid. I have to drink.
It makes no sense.
Yeah, that was painful. What if they're curved on the wrong side? I don't know. Then turn it around. Flip it upside down.
You go to get your soup, it all falls off.
Yeah, okay.
Well, it's a good thing evolution was so good to us, it made the curved side on the top instead of on the bottom. And then
the curved side, the part that's concave, is what defines the top versus the bottom, Kent. What are you talking about? It's impossible.
I don't know. Maybe he's making a joke that isn't landing.
Okay, sure, I'll take a drink, because maybe that is it. You know, it had the cadence that was kind of jokey, so yeah. Yeah, as Gillian Huxley Conspiracy Ren says, so if spoons were upside down, yeah, apparently, yeah, just turn them over. Just turn them over. That's it. Now you got it. Don't use your spoon upside down, Kent. That's all I got for you. I think Kent might be so stupid that he might be the guy who throws out half of the candies at the M&M factory because they said W.
Some of them say E, some of them have
That's
the number
true.
3.
Yeah, some of them have like that 3, or maybe it's a sigma. So I guess, yeah, he can only really keep about a quarter of them. The rest are just misprints. You gotta get rid of them.
And very slowly, over millions of years, the spoon got grooves cut in the end. Probably by erosion. I'm not sure about that. Slowly, the groove...
So, which process of evolution is erosion supposed to be an analogy for? Is it natural selection, genetic drift, sexual selection, niche partitioning, mutation? It doesn't sound like any of those, but okay.
Grooves got deeper and longer and wider, and it went from a short tine fork to a long tine fork. While I was researching this...
Casual Sleeping Dragon points out, well, he is dumb enough to pick up a venomous snake with his bare hands. Yeah, that is a great point.
I became to quickly realize I have a missing link. Right between the spoons and the forks, there's a serious missing link because spoons are rounded and have no grooves. Now, forks are squared and have grooves. That is two jumps.
It's the spork.
I don't think even punctuated equilibrium could do that. So I knew I had a missing link, but I just couldn't find it. Now, one day I was flying to Connecticut to preach, and the stewardess walked down the aisle. Here we were 30,000 feet off the ground. The stewardess walks down the aisle and handed me the missing link. I don't think she knew what she had, but my trained scientific eye picked it up right away. I said, wow, I got it. The missing link. Later that day, the preacher said, hey, you want to go get some chicken for supper? I said, that'd be great, brother. We went to Popeye's Fried Chicken, and I found another missing link, folks. There they are, the missing links.
There's a joke that didn't land.
So the evolution of silverware is nearly complete. It means I need to get a government grant now to renew my research and continue. About 30 or 40 million ought to do it. Eric, think we could finish up on this for 30 or 40 million? By the way.
And that right there is a joke about how the government spends too much on science. Which, of all the things that the government spends money on, that's one of the least objectionable. Given how much they spend on just, like, killing random people around the world. Or helping other people kill random people around the world. So, yeah, like, look, there's a lot of reasons I'm not a big fan of the United States federal government. But their science spending budget, not really one of them. Let's see, Rosina Ripsneck Keller for $1.99 says, forks grow tines via sexual selection. Duh. You know what? Those tines are pretty sexy. Can't deny it. Savage 1080 radiometric pixel scoper for $5 says, this is nonsense. The missing link is clearly the chopstick. Yeah, where is the chopstick in your crazy little cladogram there, Kent? What happened to the humble chopstick? One of my favorite eating utensils. I have been known to eat chips with chopsticks because it means my hands don't get greasy or covered in like cheese powder if I'm eating like a Dorito or something.
I eat my pizza rolls with chopsticks.
There you go. See? Chopsticks are great. Honestly, I think there should be more widespread chopstick use in like Western countries. I feel like parents, if your kids don't know how to use a chopstick by the time that they're really good at using a fork, I feel like you're just not doing enough. Help them learn how to use chopsticks. And if you don't know how to use chopsticks, it's a journey you can go on together. Chopsticks are amazing. There are many meals that I would not want to eat if I had to use a fork and knife, like ramen. I love ramen, even instant ramen. I do not want to eat it with a fork. That sounds terrible. All right, here we go.
While I was doing research on this, people sent me stuff from all over the country, thinking they may have found, a link in this. There were some very obvious frauds.
Savage 1080 radiometric pixels cover for $2 says, sexy tines lead to forking. I have heard that, yes. Not on my Christian silverware drawer. No forking in my Christian silverware drawer.
Somebody tried to pass off what is anybody should be able to tell. This is a fork head on a spoon handle. I didn't fall for it. I caught it right away. They glued them together, and they didn't get it past me. I just want you to know.
Now, that's weird, because last time I checked, silverware sets typically have forks and knives with the same handles. So, like, even in this analogy, where, like, I know this is supposed to be a joke about, like, Piltdown Man, but, like, even in the analogy, it doesn't really work. Because, in fact, the handles of many spoons and knives and forks in the same set are, in fact, largely identical. So, like, I don't even know how this is supposed to track.
So we do thorough research in this field. Arranging things in order doesn't prove a thing.
Sir Derpy Mister says, that is a Piltdown Man reference? It absolutely is. Because what he's referencing is the taking of an orangutan jaw and chimp teeth and a human skull and modifying them to fit together, and then the creation of a hoax fossil that is actually a chimera. Yep. And the only real famous example of that is Piltdown Man. I mean, you could argue that, like, Archaeoraptor was another example, but it's not nearly as famous as Piltdown Man. And unlike Piltdown Man, it didn't actually fool any paleontologists. It just fooled, like, one amateur fossil collector and National Geographic. Which is, I don't know if you know, not paleontologists. Rosina Ripsneck Keller for $1.99 says, Dapper Dinosaur is prejudiced against us forkers. Look, what you do in the privacy of your own silverware drawer is up to you. I'm just saying that in my Christian silverware drawer, there's no forking.
If you arrange words in order, Alan Lawrence in the wheelchair, a good friend of ours here.
Is that like his title or something? Alex Lawrence in the wheelchair? What is this? Just is that just casual ableism or something? Or are there just a whole bunch of people with the same name and only one of them is in a wheelchair, Kent? Because I know which one seems more likely, Kent. It's the casual ableism, in case you're wondering, everybody. I'm taking a drink. It's not technically a drink trigger, but like casual bigotry really means that my brain has to cool off a little bit. Yep, I'm sure the most important thing about that person is that they're in a wheelchair. I'm sure that's the defining part of their personhood. Like, hey, what do you want people to know about you? Not your interests, not your job, not your beliefs about politics or religion, not your friends, not your family. No, just you in a wheelchair? That's the thing we know about you. You're in a wheelchair. Yep. Every person I've ever known who's been in a wheelchair, that is the only thing they want to talk about is their wheelchair.
Alan spent quite a bit of time putting words together to show how that you can turn a cat to a cot to a dot to a dog, changing one letter at a time.
That doesn't seem like it would take that much time, but okay.
Does that prove the cat and the dog are closely related with only two intermediate species between them?
No, Kent, because the names of these organisms in English isn't an objective part of their biology, something I have trouble thinking that even you don't know. And I know this is supposed to be an analogy for mutation, but guess what? DNA isn't actually a written language, right? We analogize it as if it were, and we talk about it with linguistic metaphor, but it's not actually that. Further, words don't change that way. We actually know how words do evolve because they do, and it's not like this. Historical linguistics is a thing. We actually have complex hypotheses and theories and evidence that's been gathered. We have ways to reconstruct the common ancestor of various words from various languages, or even various words in the same language. We know how it works. And it actually is a system that's very analogous to evolution. But it has nothing to do with just adding or subtracting or replacing a single letter in the written form of various words. I'm taking another drink. I can't with this right now. This is like the casual bigotry, the ignorance of linguistics and evolutionary biology, just all put together. And this is some of the dumbest stuff. Old man writer of the Irish textbook for $5 says, if there's no forking in your Christian silverware drawer, what about your atheist one? Oh yeah, that was just a complete fork fest, right? Just all forking. All the time. Right? It's a hot fork on fork action right there.
No. Matter of fact, if you play around with this for a while, you can turn yourself into a fool before you know it. That's exactly what's happened to those who believe we all came from a rock, and Satan is laughing at them. And
no one believes that anyone came from a rock, Kent. I'm just going to take a drink.
Except Kent believes that.
Well, yeah. I mean, you could argue that creationists generally believe that, since God formed humans out of the dust of the earth, which there hadn't been a whole lot of time for the dust to accumulate, so it probably wasn't dead skin cells. Probably just a bunch of light sand. And you know what sand is? Tiny rocks.
it's tragic. See, they're not the enemy. The devil's the enemy. And we've got to somehow learn to love the sinner and hate the sin, you know. These guys who believe in evolution are not the enemy. They're the mission field.
You know, you say that, Kent, but then you also go on and on about how Satan is actually the one in charge of evolution and how all these evolutionists are brainwashing people and how they're trying to corrupt the youth and whatnot. And that's the kind of rhetoric that basically like fascists use to talk about the target of their current ire. So when you say, well, they're not the enemy, they're the mission field, it rings a little bit hollow when you use language that I would expect from, like, you know, the guy in charge of Germany during World War II, or like Pinochet or something, when you talk about evolutionary biologists and college professors and whatnot. So, and look, I'm not saying that Ken Hovind is literally calling for like the genocide of people who don't reject science. I don't think he is. I'm just saying that his rhetoric sounds like people who have called for the extermination of entire groups of people because they didn't like them. And he applies that language to people who teach science. So, yeah, when he says, well, they're not the enemy, I don't believe you, Kent. You obviously think about them as the enemy. My Unfinished Journey, who's been a member for 15 months and is at the ambient level, says, oh, dang near missed the stream. I blame it on Kent, AIG, and all the other bags of forking forkers. We'll take a drink for that. That's good. All right, here we go.
But as long as they're hurting other students, I think somebody ought to stand up to them and say, look, what you're doing is dangerous, it's wrong, you're destroying the faith of other students. Knock it off. Okay?
Yes. Nothing sounds like not the enemy, like, hey, you're dangerous and wrong and you're destroying people. That's the kind of language I use about people who I consider my enemy. Right? So, sorry, Kent.
Tell Textbooks now are teaching that dinosaurs turned to birds.
Okay. This is not how you should put this. Birds evolved from dinosaurs. But dinosaurs as a group didn't just all evolve into birds. Birds diverged from other coelurosaurs sometime in like the middle-ish of the Jurassic. And by that I mean that like the stem birds that are more closely related to birds than they are to say like non-avian coelurosaurs like Deinonychosaurs or something, they diverged sometime in the Jurassic. Now they weren't crown birds. That probably didn't happen until about the Albian stage of the early Cretaceous, which is like the final stage of the early Cretaceous. So if you want to use birds in the strictest sense of like members of the group Aves, then yeah, Jurassic. Or sorry, early Cretaceous, like that last bit of the early Cretaceous. But the group that we kind of call birds broadly, like Aviale, which includes things like Archaeopteryx and Sinornithosaurus, Confuciusaurus, things like that, Ichthyornis, then that is going to be Jurassic.
This article says birds or dinosaurs are alive as birds.
Correct. And you got anything?
Well, I'm sorry, that is just simply a lie that has been proven wrong some time ago.
You know what the fun thing is? This is the exact topic I debated Kent on. And the biggest takeaway that I got from that is that Kent can't tell if birds are dinosaurs because Kent doesn't know what a dinosaur is. Like, if I said, hey, plates are flatware, and you said, no, they aren't. I said, well, they obviously are, and then I listed off the requirements to be flatware and pointed out how plates meet every single one of them. And then you said, yeah, but they're completely different from saucers, and then you just started describing saucers. That seems like it doesn't work, right? Because those are both flatware. And you haven't refuted anything about what I said. That's what Kent did. And then if I ask you, well, what's flatware in the first place, and you don't actually have an answer to that, it means you're just not equipped to have the conversation.
Not even not having an answer, but saying it's an interesting question that you've never even pondered before.
Exactly. And that's the position Kent was in that debate. Kent, until I asked him, according to him, had never even thought to figure out what a dinosaur was in the first place. So when Kent tells you that birds aren't dinosaurs, he doesn't know what he's talking about. Even if he were right, he couldn't actually say that with any authority. Because the man doesn't even know what a dinosaur is. Vince O'Connor for $4.99 says, love the idiot, hate the idiocy. Yes. Goodness. All right, here we go.
That is ridiculous, of course, to change a dinosaur to a bird. Back in October 99...
Well, it is ridiculous, because you can't change a dinosaur into a bird, because birds are already dinosaurs, right? It's like saying, you can't change a mammal into a whale. Well, I mean, you kind of can, in that there were non-whale mammals that whales evolved from, but it's not like it changed into something that wasn't a mammal by becoming a whale. And one of the things that's great is, I love the analogy of whales being mammals to birds being dinosaurs, because every single argument that you use to say birds aren't dinosaurs applies equally well to whales not being mammals, right? You can say like, well, dinosaurs don't have, and then you list a bird thing. You can say, okay, well, mammals don't have blowholes. Well, except for whales, right? So I guess that doesn't help. So yeah. Anyway, that's one of my favorites. Is just whales aren't mammals, according to the same logic that birds aren't dinosaurs, according to creationists.
Articles came out all over the papers, all over the world, saying that we have another missing link. We have proven evolution. We found a missing link between birds and dinosaurs.
I mean, if you want to talk about transitional forms between birds and dinosaurs, there are just so many. In fact, I think it might actually be time to show some while I talk about it, right? So, wrong spot. It's all tiny because of where I put it, so we're going to make it big because I guess it's kind of a dapper as a professional. We'll take a drink for it. But, yeah, you're currently seeing various transitional forms between birds and dinosaurs. Now, virtually none of them are actually even possibly directly ancestral to modern birds, but again, that's not the point. The thing is, we have transitional forms for the development of beaks, for the development of veined feathers, for the development of asymmetrical flight feathers, for the development, the increasing association between the metatarsal bones that eventually fuse in modern birds, for the development of the keeled sternum, for the development of the robust furcula, for the development of the semilunate carpal that allows birds to fold their wings, for the development of the flight actual like musculature and skeletal structures, which develop in other organisms, right? Like dromaeosaurs and troodontids, so raptors, right? They have the same basic action when they grasp prey with their hands as birds do when they flap their wings. We have all of this transitional stuff all over the place. And Kent's answer to that is to basically just say, yeah, but nuh-uh. Which I don't think is actually a response. So here's more Kent.
National Geographic, October, 99.
Yes, publishing about Archaeoraptor, the dinosaur hybrid fossil that was stuck together, presumably by some Chinese farmer. How many paleontologists did it fool? I already gave away the answer earlier. Let's see if Bent remembers.
None.
You do remember, correct.
No, I didn't remember.
You just guessed?
Yep.
Well, it worked.
Proof, breaking news, the missing link. We found it, folks.
I mean, there were many other links between basal silverosaurs and birds before this. Like, Archaeopteryx was found way back in the 19th century, but okay.
January 2000. Oops. Sorry, it was a fake.
Something every single paleontologist who looked at the fossil had already told National Geographic and the guy who bought the fossil in the first place.
We're fooled. Somebody had created this fossil.
Kind of. Someone had glued two fossils together. One of which, importantly, was of Microraptor, an animal which is itself not only a transitional form between basal Silurosauria and birds, but also confirmed a previous prediction of evolutionary biology that the relatives of birds would be found to have four wings, with wings being used on the forelimbs and the hind limbs, because it was noticed that when chickens had a mutation that caused their foot scales to instead develop into feathers, those feathers themselves were like the remiges of the flight wing. That's the actual, like the flight feathers, the asymmetrical flight feathers. And so it was hypothesized that there must have been a stage in the evolution of avian flight where the hind limbs were also used for lift, because otherwise, why would birds be programmed, would still have the programming in them to make flight feathers on their legs when those flight feathers never actually develop? They just stay as little tiny scales. Good question. The only reasonable explanation I can find is evolutionary. And Microraptor, one of the animals in this composite, demonstrated that that prediction was true. It's almost like evolution actually meets the so-called gold standard in science.
I guess they realized, there's only been a few of these Archaeopteryx fossils found.
Okay. Am I hallucinating, or did he just say Archaeopteryx?
I think that's what he said.
Do you think Kent knows that Archaeoraptor isn't the same word as Archaeopteryx?
No, he doesn't know that.
I'm going to take a drink. If I were scripting right now, this would be one of those times when I would walk away and go do something else for 5 or 10 minutes. Hey, pro tip to creationists out there. Archaeoraptor and Archaeopteryx aren't the same thing. You can tell because the names are both spelled and pronounced differently. No one has ever found that Archaeopteryx was a fake. Fred Hoyle kinda tried when he pretended that the Archaeopteryx fossil feathers were actually just faked by putting cement on the slab. But that's just impossible for numerous reasons, including that the feather impressions are identical on the counter slab, which you couldn't do by just applying some cement. And also, that the matrix that the feathers impressions are made of is just the same fine-grained limestone, and it's not cement. Like, chemically, it's not cement. That's another clue that that's not what happened. But that's the closest anyone has ever come to saying that Archaeopteryx has been faked. And Archaeoraptor isn't Archaeopteryx. Neither of the component fossils are fossils of Archaeopteryx.
And they're selling, if you could buy one, for millions of dollars.
It wasn't millions of dollars, but it doesn't matter. Who cares what the price is?
So all one guy would have to do is take 5 years out of his life and very carefully construct a fraud fossil. He could make a bunch of money.
There is almost no chance that this fossil was constructed over the course of years, because it was almost certainly constructed by like a Chinese farmer in Liaoning. What is it? Liaoning province? Yeah, I think so. Right? All it had to do was be good enough to fool non-professionals, because that's who it fooled. The people who bought it in China were fooled, and the guy who bought it from the guys who bought it in China was fooled. None of them were professional paleontologists. And it wasn't millions. You can go to the Tucson Fossil and Gem Show and buy dinosaur fossils for less than millions of dollars.
Retire, him and the whole family retire for life. They had a deal in the paper a couple months ago about this fossil.
Yeah, Gillian Huxley conspiracy run points this out. But the Ica stones are real. Yeah, the known forgeries that Kent accepts.
It's been on display for years in this museum. They're so proud of it. It's over 100 years it was on display. Then the plaster started falling off. They realized the whole thing had been faked.
I have no idea what he's talking about right now. I don't know what specimen this is. I don't know what museum this is. As far as I can tell, this is just a story that didn't happen, so I'm taking a drink. Also, I'm pretty sure that stewardess story was BS, so we're taking a drink for that, too. Okay.
100 years ago. Lasted 100 years before it fell apart, so I'm sure the guy spent his money and retired a long time ago. See,
also, most fossils that are on display on the museum floors are not actually fossils. They're replicas of fossils that are in the back, because fossils are heavy, they are essentially priceless since they're unique, and they're of scientific interest, which means that if they're damaged, you've lost that scientific data forever. So generally speaking, lighter replicas are put on display.
Some people are so anxious to believe this theory, they will not look critically at the evidence that's presented.
Which is funny, given that every single paleontologist who looked at Archaeoraptor, something that would confirm their previous ideas, said, no, this is a fake. If every single professional looks at a fake and says this is a fake, the only conclusion I can reach is that they are looking at it critically. Like, what other conclusion can you reach about that? I don't know. I mean, Ben, do you have an alternate explanation other than that they're actually looking at it critically?
No.
Yeah. So this is just Kent basically just lying. I'm going to take a drink, because that's nonsense. All right, here we go.
Now, they will look critically at stuff for creation, but they don't look critically at stuff for their own
Demonstrably false
theory. The skeptics groups all over the country have this problem. They are so blinded, they won't even look at. They say, I'm a skeptic. Well, I will ask them, are you skeptical of evolution?
I mean, I'm skeptical of evolution. But part of being a skeptic is accepting claims that have sufficient evidence. That's one of the reasons why I hate it when creationists or flat earthers or whatever say, well, I'm just a skeptical truth seeker. Because no, you're not. You're a denialist. Skeptics accept claims when the actual evidence indicates that the claim is significantly more likely to be true than false. Right? And it's true. People have different levels of skepticism for different things, right? Like, if you tell me, oh, hey, I got a new puppy today, I'm not going to ask for any evidence. Your claim on its own is sufficient evidence for me to believe that you have a puppy, because I'm not very skeptical about that claim. For one thing, it's a fairly trivial claim. For two, it doesn't really matter to my life ultimately. And three, I've never seen a good reason why people would lie about getting a new puppy. It seems weird. So yeah, in that case, I'm not very skeptical. Now, if you told me like, oh yeah, my cousin Randy, he was cured of his cancer because a megachurch pastor spit on him, I'd be like, yeah, I don't believe that unless I have a whole lot more evidence, right? Like, that seems pretty unlikely. Robert Acid, who's been a member for 19 months, is at the annual level, says, not looked critically at the evidence, like pterosaurs over the freeway, Kent. Yeah, Kent just believed some trucker who said that basically his truck was like chasing a pterodactyl. Which, yeah, that makes a whole lot of sense. And also Robert Acid puts in Mothra, King Ghidorah, a pelagic tunicate, gross, and King Ghidorah. So we'll take a drink for the kaiju and spit it back up because of the pelagic tunic. No, I'm not doing that. Okay, here we go.
No, I'm only skeptical of creation. Okay, well then you're not a skeptic.
I mean, if someone actually said that, then that would be true. The thing is, evolution does have the evidence, right? We had it in anatomy and physiology. We have it in biochemistry. We have it in genetics. We have it in the fossil record. We have it in embryology. We have it in ERVs. We have it all over the place. We have literally no evidence that any distinctive claims of young Earth creationism are true. So if you're a skeptic, the only conclusion that you can reach is to either reject both because you have extremely high evidentiary standards, but if you're going to accept one of them, the only one that you can accept is evolution. And that means that you're still being skeptical. I'm skeptical of evolution. I'm skeptical of universal gravitation. I'm skeptical of germ theory. But what skeptical doesn't mean is not accepting something as true. It means you wait for the evidence to be in favor of the claim before you accept it. That's why the word doubt isn't the same as the word skeptic.
You're biased.
Everyone is biased, Ken. That doesn't make them wrong, and it doesn't make them not skeptic.
There's a great article here in USA Today from February 3rd of the year 2000.
Let's get to this February 3rd of the year 2000 next time, because that sounds like a slight change in topic, and we're already getting to the point where we've been going for 2 hours. Time to wrap things up. Bent, do you have anything that you want to announce to people before we get out of here?
Yeah, I'm overdue on a thank you for someone who gifted me items on my Amazon wish list. I don't know who it was. It did not come with a note, but whoever out there gifted me items on my, thank you very much.
Awesome.
Appreciate it.
Yeah. I mean, look, getting stuff from the wish list, it's just always a good day, right? It's no matter how bad your day is going, it gets a little bit better when something from the wish list shows up and you get to open it and see what someone got you. So, yeah, I always say, well, I don't know always, but I often say, if you ever want to make my day or Ben's day or whoever else's day, grab something from their Amazon wish list. It's really nice. All right, so let's take a look at what's coming up this week. So today is Tuesday. Tomorrow, Wednesday, I have 2 things going on. One, assuming that people can make it, which, is possible, we're going to have Power Rangers Jungle Beast at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern, over on Top Hats Off, my other channel, where I do stuff like tabletop RPG actual plays. So, if you want to see me as the GM, Bent as the Green Ranger, Maddie from Science Side Up as the Blue Ranger, show up for that. It's a good time. We are actually coming to the close of that campaign. That campaign, I think, only has like 7 episodes left. So, it's probably going to be another 3 or 4 months, and then that's it. Also, earlier that day, at least I believe earlier that day, I'm going to be probably showing up on Gutsick Gibbons' channel. She is doing a fundraiser for Dr. Dino, who's been on this channel a few times. He is working on getting some money up to do some field work in paleontology. And so she's going to be having a live stream fundraiser for that with all sorts of various takes. And some of the stuff that she's going over first is stuff about paleontology. So I'm planning on showing up for that. So keep your eye out for that stream tomorrow. Then on Thursday, I am releasing the Pam Acker Catholic Young Earth Creationist Part 1. And that is the first part of a 5-part series about Pam Acker from the Kolbe Institute, named after St. Maximilian Kolbe, who is if I remember correctly, he was a Polish priest who basically traded his spot for an execution in a concentration camp during World War II for another Polish soldier who eventually survived. So basically, this guy was about to be taken away to be killed, and he offered himself instead, and so that Polish soldier survived. Now, as far as, saints go, seems like a pretty good reason to make someone a saint. But I don't think he had anything to do with a whole bunch of anti-evolution nonsense. So it's kind of weird that he's their guy. But anyway, that's Thursday. But then Friday. Oh, so, by the way, that thing on Thursday is happening at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern. But on Friday, starting at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern, I am having the 2024 Dapper Dinosaur Birthday Extravaganza. I will be sending out links to many people who have been guests on this channel there will be a video to debunk. It will last for hours and hours, and hopefully it'll be a lot of fun. Basically, I'm just going to keep going until either the video ends or I just can't anymore. Chances are it'll be that I can't anymore first, but whatever. So yeah, that'll be there. Now, there will not be a Saturday show because I will be beat. I probably will try not to even speak for the rest of Saturday because my voice will probably be shot. So, nothing on Saturday. And then on Tuesday, next week, 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. Currently, the plan is Matt with Maddie. Now, Maddie has not confirmed, but she almost always confirms. So right now, I am planning on Matt with Maddie. If it doesn't happen, I will figure out something else. But there will be a show at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. So, and Chris McDaniel says, fellow Gemini, yes, I am in fact a Gemini. Although, that doesn't really make a whole lot of sense, since the stars that form Gemini were not in their same position back when I hatched in the Jurassic period. So, there you go. All right, everybody. I will see all of you hopefully tomorrow on Guts of Gibbons' channel, and then again for Power Rangers Jungle Beasts, and then again for the premiere on Thursday. I hope all of you have a wonderful rest of your night. We are not doing a Power Rangers watch party tonight, so maybe we'll do it. I was going to say on Saturday, but nope, we don't have a thing on Saturday. Maybe next week after Matt with Maddie we'll do it. I don't know. So stay safe out there. Have a wonderful rest of your night, and I will see all of you later. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Thoravara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Eleron Teller, Horseflesh, Ian Chen, Kelvin Brostek Van Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabdy Babdy, Sphincter of Doom, Lawless, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.